All right, today's the day. We're starting the low buck buggy build. This buggy, if you watched the last video, I talked about this. I'm taking this Jeep Cherokee. I'm gonna take everything off of it. I have a set of 1-ton axles that I'm probably gonna use on this thing. But I'm gonna use all the drivetrain, all the stock drivetrain, the inline 6, the AX15 that's in it, and the stock transfer case, and try to put together a buggy as cheap as possible. So I know I'm gonna need to buy a fuel cell, a radiator. I've got the seats out of my old car. I have most of the full hydro steering stuff. I've got a set of air shocks. I've got the wheels and tires. I know there's gonna be a handful of things that I'm forgetting, but I've got a majority of the parts. So this is going to be kind of a fun project to see how cheaply we can do it, and I'm going to keep a tally as I go. So we're going to build a full tube chassis around these drivetrain parts. My plan is to kind of take the same design as Andrew's car, which is this one. It's going to be a 3-seater, so going to be very similar as far as the chassis layout goes, except for the drivetrain length is going to be a little different. That motor's super long, but overall the chassis is going to look very similar to this car. So today we're going to start with pulling the motor out of the Cherokee. I'm going to try to keep the chassis a roller, that way I can pull the motor and then move the Cherokee out of the carport. That way it's not in my workspace for next week. I'm gonna try to spend at least 1 day a week on this, work throughout the week, and then 1 day a week work on this buggy. That way, slowly but surely, we'll get plugged away at this and see it making progress. So if you guys are ever trying to get these fan clutch bolts off, I saw a super cool hack on the Canadian Guy What No Way channel, and seems to be pretty helpful when you already taken the belt off or when it's just slipping. Basically just put your wrench on the right hand side of the pulley and just tap down, and it'll crack all of these bolts loose. Cool little hack. Alright, so now we've officially got the motor trans and transfer case out of the Cherokee. This thing is a lot longer than the typical setup that goes in a Buggy. I measured it compared to the 3.9 V6 with the 700 R4 and the Dana 300 that's in Andrew's car, and this thing is 12 inches longer than that drivetrain. So it's a whole foot longer. So it's pretty long, but I'll have to measure. I'll measure height really quick. The 3.9 is roughly 26, 27 inches roughly in there, and this one is about 26 inches deep, so we're roughly about the same height. So we should be able to keep the dash tube height the same, and we'll have room to clear the subframe and up here. So we won't have to increase the height on that, but the overall length is just going to be longer. So we kept the whole Cherokee a roller, that way I could push it out from under the carport. I went through and labeled most of the wires that we're going to keep on this harness, so that when we go to trim the whole harness, I'll be able to keep all the necessary stuff and get rid of all the extras. The next thing to do on this is going to be ripping out the whole dash and get the stock computer out of there and get the rest of the harness pulled out. So the next thing to do on this Buggy will be design the chassis, get that cut out, get that assembled, and then we can get to putting the motor in and everything. We had a job come in this week that was building a bunch of handrails. And if you guys have been following the channel for a while, you'll know that I have the Bentech Dragon, which is a CNC tube machine that I draw out basically all my chassis, bumpers, sliders, whatever I'm making out of tube. Draw that all out in the Bentech software, and then I cut it out on this machine. So I figured this would be a good time to show you guys how simple this program is, and drawing handrails is super simple. So I'll give you guys an idea of what we're doing with that right now. So this is the Bentech software. We'll go ahead and open up one of these handrails. Pretty simple design. It's just two tubes that get cemented down into the ground, and then it's just a simple two-step handrail. We've got 10 of these that we did, and then we did one really long wheelchair ramp handrail. The inspection code calls for every 4 inches for there to be a tube along this handrail, so it ended up being a lot of tubes, ended up being super heavy, but that's what we had to have for code. Basically all we have to do in this program is go to create a new assembly. This here in the center is your origin point. So basically you'll come up over here to pick points, and everything works off of your origin. So when you're selected on this center point, if we're doing a handrail and we're gonna come up from the ground, let's say 42 inches. So you just go ceiling 42 inches, hit apply, that will put a pick point at 42 inches. And then say we're gonna go from this base, we're gonna come forward, let's say 36 inches. And then we know our step is gonna go down, let's say 8 inches. Hit apply, that'll add a pick point there. And then we know we wanna come up 42 inches again. So then hit apply. And all we're gonna do here is select the material that we're gonna use. So for this, we're using 1.5" 095 wall. It's gonna be a bent tube, so we'll select our die. And then hit bent tube. We're gonna have one bend, and then you're just gonna select this first pick point, go to the second one, that's gonna be where our bend is, and it's gonna come down to this third pick point. So then we'll hit OK. And then we know we're gonna have a straight tube coming up from here to here. And then say we want to add a middle bar in between these two, it'll automatically give you the center point. So then we're just going to select a straight tube from this point to this point, and that'll give us our tubes. And then from this point, we're going to want to have a miter right here. So we'll come over to the cutting tab, select auto miter, select that tube and that tube. That will auto miter those together. And then for the center tube over here, we're going to want to have that notched into these two tubes. So we'll select new cut. We're going to cut this tube to the profile of this tube, hit complete. It'll show a preview of what that notch is going to look like. Same thing with this one down here, new cut. Select the tube, it's going to go to this profile, hit complete. It'll give you that preview. And it's that simple. So now we have our basic structure. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to transfer this file from the Bentech CAD software to the Dragon Cam software. So I'll select the tube. I'm going to hit transfer to Dragon Cam, open up in the CAM software and create a new nest. That's going to open up basically our tube as a flat pattern. So we have our stick here that's 240 inches long. Come over to the parts tab, add this tube. We're going to add one of these into this nest. And basically that tube, that part is flat patterned out. So that's what the notch profile is going to look like. And it gives you the usable amount of space we have left in this tube. The Dragon wastes about 12 inches at the end of every tube just because of where the chuck goes into the machine head. And then we'll go ahead and do that with all the rest of the tubes in this and then get it cut out. Alright, so that's it for this week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed hearing a little bit about the Dragon and how we use it for all the chassis and tube work that we do. Next week we're going to do the motor mounts and trans mount for this. We got the poly bushings in. These are aluminum little setup bushings that we're going to use for mock-up. That way we don't melt the actual rubber ones or poly ones. But this drivetrain is going to be poly mounted. So we'll do the motor mounts and trans mount, and then we'll keep plugging away at the Cherokee. Like I said, I'll get the wiring harness out of there and then start designing the chassis. And hopefully we'll see that thing come together pretty soon. as always, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for all your feedback. Don't forget to keep it classy, and I'll see you guys next week.